Sophia Reynolds had perfected the art of anticipating Julian Hart's needs before he even realized them himself. In her 3 years as his executive assistant, she had become an indispensable part of his life, managing not just his schedule, but the intricate web of relationships and responsibilities that came with running a billion-dollar real estate empire. She knew how he liked his coffee, black with exactly 1 sugar cube. She knew he needed exactly 15 minutes of silence before major presentations. She knew the slight furrow of his brow meant he was about to ask for the quarterly reports, and she always had them ready. What Sophia tried desperately not to acknowledge was the way her heart raced when Julian entered the room each morning. The way his rare smiles sent warmth flooding through her chest, or how she found herself thinking about him long after she left the office. She told herself it was professional admiration, nothing more. Julian Hart was her boss. Nothing could ever happen between them, and she had made peace with that reality. Or so she believed. The morning started like any other Tuesday. Sophia arrived at the sleek downtown office building at 7:30, carrying 2 coffees from the cafe downstairs. Julian was already there, his tall frame silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He turned when she entered, and that familiar flutter started in her stomach. "Good morning, Sophia." His voice was deep and warm. Kind of voice that could calm angry investors or motivate exhausted teams with equal ease. "Good morning, Mr. Hart. Your coffee and the Henderson contracts are ready for your review." She set the cup on his desk, careful not to let their fingers touch. Those accidental moments of contact had become dangerous, sending electricity through her that she couldn't afford to feel. Julian picked up the coffee and took a sip, closing his eyes briefly in appreciation. "Perfect, as always." "What would I do without you?" "Probably hire another assistant," Sophia replied, keeping her tone light and professional, even as something warm unfurled in her chest at the compliment. "Impossible." Julian's blue eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to thicken. "No one understands me the way you do." Sophia felt her cheeks warm and quickly looked down at her tablet. "You have a meeting with the board at 10, and the architects are coming in at 2. Do you need anything else right now? Just you?" The words hung in the air before Julian seemed to catch himself. "I mean, just your usual efficiency. Thank you, Sophia." She nodded and retreated to her desk outside his office, her heart pounding. These moments were becoming more frequent, these slips where the professional boundary between them seemed to blur. She had to be more careful, had to maintain the distance that kept her heart safe. At 11:30, her phone buzzed with a text from Christopher Blake, her best friend from college. He was in town for a business trip and wanted to grab lunch. Sophia hadn't seen him in over a year, and the prospect of catching up with someone who knew her before she became Julian Hart's indispensable assistant felt like a breath of fresh air. She knocked on Julian's door. "Come in. I'm heading out for lunch, Mr. Hart. I'll be back by 1:30. Julian looked up from his laptop, something flickering across his face too quickly for her to identify. "Never take lunch out of the office." "An old friend is in town, Christopher Blake. We went to college together." "I haven't seen him in ages, Christopher." Julian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course. Enjoy your lunch." Sophia hesitated at the odd shift in his tone, but dismissed it as her imagination. She grabbed her purse and headed to the Italian restaurant Christopher had suggested, charming place with exposed brick walls and the scent of fresh basil hanging in the air. Christopher was already seated when she arrived, and his face lit up when he saw her. "Sophia." He stood and pulled her into a warm hug that lifted her off her feet. "You look amazing." They settled into easy conversation, reminiscing about their college days, laughing over embarrassing stories and shared memories. Christopher was in commercial real estate too, working for a firm in Boston, and they found themselves deep in discussion about market trends and development projects. The pasta was delicious, rich, and creamy. But Sophia got distracted by a particularly funny story Christopher was telling and didn't notice the sauce that caught on the corner of her mouth. Christopher, ever the gentleman, reached across with his napkin to wipe it away, just as he'd done countless times during their pizza-fueled study sessions years ago. "Still eating like a bird who forgot how to use her beak," he teased. Sophia laughed and grabbed her compact mirror from her purse, only to realize her lipstick had smeared in the process. The deep red color she'd applied that morning was now a mess, smudged and uneven. She tried to fix it in the restaurant bathroom, but without her makeup bag. The best she could do was apply a fresh layer over the smudged base. The result was lips that were much bolder, much redder than she typically wore to the office. "Oh, this is going to be interesting," she muttered to her reflection. But she was already running late, and there was no time to worry about it. When Sophia returned to the office at 1:20, she immediately sensed something different in the atmosphere. The usual hum of productivity felt charged, electric. She walked past the reception area and down the corridor to her desk, and that was when she saw him. Julian stood in the doorway of his office, arms crossed over his broad chest. His blue eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her steps falter. He wasn't looking at her the way a boss looks at an employee. There was something raw in his gaze, something almost desperate that made her breath catch. "Mr. Hart, is everything all right?" His eyes dropped to her lips, lingering on the bold red color, and his jaw clenched. "My office." Now, it wasn't a request. The command in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. Sophia followed him into his office, watching as he closed the door behind them with deliberate care. The click of the lock seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "Did something happen while I was gone?" She tried to keep her voice steady, professional, even as her pulse raced. Julian turned to face her, and she saw the war raging behind his eyes. "Where'd you have lunch?" "At Bella Vista, the Italian place on 5th Street. "Why?" "And it was good." His voice was tight, controlled in a way that suggested he was holding something back. "Yes, it was lovely." "Julian, what is this about?" He took a step closer, and Sophia found herself backing up until she felt the edge of his desk against her hip. "This Christopher? You're close with him?" "We're friends." "We've been friends since college." Her confusion was giving way to something else, something that felt like anticipation mixed with fear. "What's going on? Just friends?" Julian's eyes were still fixed on her lips, on that bold red color that seemed to fascinate and torment him in equal measure. "Yes, just friends." Sophia's voice was barely a whisper now. "Julian, you're scaring me a little. What is this about?" He reached up, and for one heart-stopping moment, she thought he was going to touch her face. Instead, his hand clenched into a fist and dropped to his side. "That lipstick, it's smudged. I know. Had an accident at lunch. Christopher helped me clean up some sauce and it got messed up. I didn't have time to fix it properly. Christopher." Julian's voice was rough, almost pained. "Christopher touched you." The penny dropped. Sophia stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time the jealousy burning in his eyes. The tension in his shoulders, the white-knuckled grip he had on his self-control. He was jealous. Julian Hart, billionaire CEO, the man who commanded boardrooms and closed impossible deals without breaking a sweat, was jealous of her college friend. "Julian," she started, but he cut her off. "I need you to review the Morrison contracts today." His voice had gone flat, professional, all emotion carefully locked away. "They need to be finalized by Friday. But we already reviewed those contracts twice last week." "Review them again, please." Sophia wanted to push, wanted to break through whatever wall he'd just thrown up between them. But the shuttered look on his face stopped her. "All right, I'll review them." She left his office feeling like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Everything she thought she understood about their relationship had just been turned upside down. Julian Hart had feelings for her. Real feelings. The kind that made a man who controlled billions lose his composure over smudged lipstick and an innocent lunch with a friend. Sophia sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen without seeing it. Her hand unconsciously reached up to touch her lips, still colored that bold, devastating red. Inside Julian's office, she could see him through the glass wall, his head. In his hands, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. Something had changed between them today, something fundamental and irreversible. And Sophia had no idea what came next. The rest of that Tuesday crawled by in agonizing slowness. Sophia tried to focus on the Morrison contracts, but the words blurred together on her screen. Every few minutes, her eyes would drift to Julian's office, where she could see him pacing back and forth like a caged animal. He ran his hands through his dark hair repeatedly, a gesture she recognized as frustration. The easy rhythm they had built over 3 years felt shattered, replaced by a tension so thick it was almost suffocating. At 5 o'clock, most of the staff began filtering out of the office. Sophia usually stayed until 6 or 7, matching Julian's workaholic schedule, but today felt different. She was packing her things when his office door opened. "Sophia, wait." His voice was quieter than usual, almost hesitant. "Can we talk?" Her heart hammered against her ribs. Of course, she followed him back into his office, and this time when he closed the door, he didn't lock it. He gestured to the leather couch by the window, and they sat down with careful distance between them. The city lights were beginning to twinkle below as dusk settled over the skyline. "I owe you an apology." Julian's hands were clasped together, his knuckles white. "The way I acted today was completely inappropriate. You have every right to have lunch with whoever you want. And I had no business interrogating you about it." Sophia studied his profile. The strong jaw, the slight stubble that appeared by late afternoon, the way his shoulders carried the weight of his empire. "You weren't just being inappropriate. You were jealous." He flinched at the word but didn't deny it. "Yes, I was jealous. I am jealous. And I have no right to be why." The question hung between them, delicate and dangerous. Julian turned to face her fully, and the raw emotion in his blue eyes made her breath catch. "Because you're my employee. Because there are rules and boundaries and professional ethics that exist for good reasons. Because if I cross this line, I could lose the best thing that's ever happened to my career and to my life. But you want to cross it." It wasn't a question. God, yes. The admission seemed to tear out of him. "I've wanted to cross it for longer than I care to admit. Do you know when I realized it? 8 months ago. You stayed late to help me prepare for the Shanghai deal. It was just us in the office at midnight. You were explaining the cultural nuances of the negotiation while eating cold Chinese takeout. You had this sparkle in your eyes, this passion for the work. And you made some joke about fortune cookies that made me laugh so hard I almost choked. And I realized I wasn't just impressed by you. I was falling in love with you." Sophia's world tilted on its axis. Those words, "I was falling in love with you," echoed in her mind. She had dreamed of hearing something like this from him, but now that it was real, she felt paralyzed. Julian continued, the words pouring out now like a dam had broken. "I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself it was just admiration, just respect for your incredible mind and work ethic. But then little things would happen. You'd smile at me in a certain way, or we'd accidentally touch reaching for the same file, and I'd feel it in my chest. This ache that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with wanting you in my life in ways I had no right to want. The past few months must have been torture for you." Sophia's voice was barely above a whisper. "You have no idea. And then Monday, when you came back from lunch with that lipstick smudged, looking so beautiful and radiant, and all I could think was that another man had made you smile like that, had touched your face, had shared an intimacy with you that I couldn't. It drove me insane. I've negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. But the thought of you with someone else made me lose every ounce of control I've ever had." Sophia felt tears pricking at her eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of recognition, of finally being able to acknowledge the truth she'd been hiding from herself. "Julian, I need to tell you something." He looked at her with such vulnerability that her heart ached. "Please don't say you're quitting. I'll never mention this again, if you want. We can go back to how things were. I just can't lose you entirely. I'm not quitting." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I'm going to tell you the truth, and it's terrifying, but you deserve to know. I've been in love with you for over a year. Maybe longer. I didn't let myself acknowledge it because it seemed impossible, because you were my boss and I was just your assistant, and people like me don't end up with people like you. But every single day, I came to work early just to have a few extra minutes with you. Every night, I went home thinking about you. And when you smile at me, really smile, it feels like the sun coming out after a storm." Julian's eyes widened, and she saw hope flare in them like a struck match. "You love me? I love you." The words felt like freedom. "I love your brilliant mind and your terrible jokes during conference calls. I love how you fight for your employees and how you never ask anyone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. I love that you remember everyone's birthday and that you donated an entire wing to the Children's Hospital anonymously. I love you, Julian Hart. And I have been dying inside pretending I didn't. The distance between them disappeared as Julian reached for her, his hands cupping her face with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity in his eyes. I need to kiss you. Tell me I can kiss you, yes. Please, yes. When their lips met. It felt like every moment of the past 3 years had been leading to this. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid the spell might break. But then Julian's hand slid into her hair and Sophia's fingers clutched his shirt, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of months of longing, of nights spent thinking about each other, of a connection that went far beyond professional admiration. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Julian pressed his forehead against hers. What do we do now? Sophia laughed, a sound of pure joy. I have no idea. This is complicated. Incredibly complicated. He kissed her again, softer this time. The board will have opinions. HR will need to be involved. People will talk. Let them talk. Sophia pulled back to look into his eyes. I've spent 3 years being the perfect professional, never stepping out of line, always maintaining boundaries. But I'm done pretending I don't feel this. I'm done denying what I want. And what I want is you. Julian's smile was brilliant, transforming his usually serious face into something radiant. You're sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. I won't be able to pretend anymore. I don't want you to pretend. I want you to be real with me, always. They stayed on that couch for hours, talking about everything they'd never been able to say before. Julian told her about the loneliness of his position, how isolating it was to be the person everyone looked to for answers. Sophia shared her fears about being seen as just an assistant, about people assuming she wasn't smart enough to do more. They talked about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. They talked until the cleaning crew arrived and gave them knowing smiles. Come home with me tonight. Julian's voice was low, intimate. Not for anything except being together. I just want more time with you. Sophia nodded, and they left the building hand in hand, no longer caring who might see. Julian's penthouse apartment was exactly what she expected. All modern lines and expensive furnishings, but what surprised her were the personal touches. Photographs of his family scattered on shelves, a worn paperback mystery novel on the coffee table, a guitar in the corner that spoke of a hobby she hadn't known about. They ordered food and ate sitting on his balcony. Looking out at the glittering city below, Julian played her a song on the guitar, rusty and imperfect, but earnest. Sophia told him about her dreams of eventually starting her own consulting firm. They kissed on the couch until they were both dizzy with it. But Julian was a gentleman. He gave her one of his shirts to sleep in and took the guest room, even though every instinct clearly screamed at him to do otherwise. As Sophia lay in his bed, surrounded by the scent of him, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Complete and utter peace. Whatever challenges tomorrow brought, they would face them together. Wednesday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Julian's bedroom. Sophia woke to find him standing in the doorway with coffee and a smile that made her heart skip. They had crossed a line last night, and there was no going back. The question now was how to move forward. Over breakfast, they made a plan. They would go to HR together, disclose their relationship, and ensure everything was handled properly. Julian would recuse himself from any decisions about Sophia's employment, salary, or performance reviews. Those would go through the chief operating officer instead. They would maintain professionalism at work, while being honest about their relationship. The conversation with Patricia Morrison, the head of HR, went better than expected. The older woman listened carefully, reviewed company policy, and then smiled warmly. I've been with this company for 15 years, Mr. Hart. I've seen a lot of workplace romances, and most of them were messy because people tried to hide them. The fact that you're both being upfront and want to do this properly speaks volumes about your character. We'll make it work. By lunchtime, Word had spread through the office. Sophia felt the stares, heard the whispers, but she held her head high. She had nothing to be ashamed of. That afternoon, during a team meeting, one of the junior analysts made a snide comment about people sleeping their way to the top. Before Sophia could respond, Julian's voice cut through the room like ice. That comment was completely out of line, Bradley. Sophia has been the top performer in this office since the day she started. She saved us millions in caught errors, brought in major clients through her networking, and works harder than anyone else here. Her position and her salary have nothing to do with our personal relationship, which began yesterday, and everything to do with her exceptional abilities. You owe her an apology. The room went silent. Bradley stammered an apology and the meeting continued, but Sophia felt warmth flooding through her. Julian wasn't just defending her. He was making sure everyone knew she had earned her place. The first real test came on Friday evening. Julian's mother, Catherine Hart, requested dinner with both of them. The elegant woman who had built her own fashion empire before retiring was known for her sharp mind and even sharper tongue. Sophia dressed carefully, choosing a sophisticated navy dress that was professional but elegant. The restaurant Catherine chose was exclusive and intimate. She was already seated when they arrived, and her keen eyes took in everything. The way Julian's hand rested on the small of Sophia's back. The way they looked at each other, the easy comfort between them. So you're the famous Sophia. Catherine's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. Julian talks about you constantly. Has for years, actually. I was beginning to wonder if he'd ever do something about it. Sophia felt herself relax slightly. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Hart. Julian has told me so much about you and your work in the fashion industry. Your sustainable fabrics initiative changed the entire landscape of ethical fashion. Catherine's eyebrow rose. Impressed. You've done your homework? I'm genuinely interested. Sophia smiled. I actually wrote my college thesis on corporate social responsibility in the fashion industry. Your company was one of my primary case studies. The evening unfolded with surprising ease. Catherine asked thoughtful questions about Sophia's background, her education, her career goals. She seemed particularly interested in Sophia's dream of starting a consulting firm someday. You should do it, Catherine said firmly over dessert. You're smart, driven, and you clearly know how to handle high-pressure situations. Plus, you've been learning from one of the best. My son might be stubborn and workaholic, but he's brilliant at what he does, Julian laughed. Thanks, Mom, I think. Catherine turned to her son, her expression softening. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at her. Don't mess this up. I don't plan to. Julian reached across the table to take Sophia's hand. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. The following weeks fell into a new rhythm. At work, they maintained professional boundaries. Sophia still managed Julian's schedule and handled his correspondence. But now, major decisions about her role went through the coup. They were careful not to show favoritism. And if anything, Julian was harder on Sophia in meetings than on anyone else, pushing her to share her insights and challenge his thinking. But after work, they were just Julian and Sophia. They cooked dinner together in his kitchen, dancing to old jazz records while the pasta boiled. They took long walks through the city, talking about everything and nothing. On weekends, they explored art galleries and bookstores, discovering shared passions for mystery novels and abstract expressionism. One Saturday morning, 3 months into their relationship, Sophia woke to find Julian watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. She asked, self-conscious, I'm just thinking about how different my life is now. Before we acknowledged this, I worked 18-hour days and went home to an empty apartment. Success felt hollow. Now I actually look forward to leaving the office because I get to spend time with you. You've made me remember that life is supposed to be lived, not just endured. Sophia traced his jaw with her finger. You've changed my life too. You've shown me that I deserve to dream bigger, to want more. You believe in me in a way no one else ever has. He caught her hand and kissed her palm. About that consulting firm you want to start? I've been thinking about it. What if we made it happen? Julian, I can't let you fund my dream. I'm not offering to fund it. I'm offering to be your first client. My company needs exactly the kind of strategic consulting you want to provide. We'd pay market rate, and it would give you a foundation to build from. You'd still be working with me, but as a partner, not an employee. Sophia felt tears forming. You really believe I can do this? I know you can do this. You're the smartest person I've ever met, and I've met a lot of smart people. The world needs what you have to offer. 6 months after that conversation with smudged lipstick that changed everything, Sophia Reynolds stood in her new office space, looking out at the city below. Her consulting firm, Reynolds Strategic Solutions, was officially launching next week. Julian had been her first client as promised, but word of mouth had brought in 3 more major companies. She had hired 2 associates and was already planning expansion. That evening, Julian picked her up from her new office for a celebration dinner. But instead of heading to a restaurant, he drove to the park where they had taken their first walk as a couple. Where are we going? Sophia asked, curious. You'll see. His smile was mysterious. He led her to a gazebo overlooking the lake, where candles had been lit and rose petals scattered on the ground. Sophia's breath caught as Julian turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Sophia Reynolds, 8 months ago. You walked into the office with smudged red lipstick and completely upended my world. You made me realize that I had been living half a life, that success without someone to share it with is empty. You've challenged me, supported me, loved me, even when I was being an idiot. You've shown me what true partnership looks like. He dropped to one knee, and Sophia's hands flew to her mouth as tears streamed down her face. I don't want to be your boss or your client or your business partner. Although I'm honored to be all those things, I want to be your husband. I want to spend the rest of my life making you laugh, supporting your dreams, and being worthy of the incredible gift of your love. Will you marry me? The diamond ring caught the candlelight, sparkling like the future spread before them. Sophia dropped to her knees in front of him, cupping his face in her hands. Yes, 1,000 times yes. I love you, Julian Hart. They kissed as the sun set over the water. 2 people who had found each other against all odds, who had been brave enough to cross the lines that separated them, who had chosen love even when it was complicated and scary and uncertain. A year later, on their wedding day, as Sophia walked down the aisle in a white gown with bold red lipstick on her lips, she caught Julian's eye and saw her whole future reflected there. A future built on love, respect, partnership, and the courage to follow their hearts. And as they exchanged vows in front of family and friends, promising to love and cherish each other through all of life's adventures, Sophia thought about that Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. One smudged lipstick, one moment of jealousy, one honest conversation that led to a lifetime of happiness. Sometimes the best things in life come from the moments that break all the rules. Sometimes love doesn't follow the expected path. And sometimes the person you've been looking for has been right beside you all along, just waiting for the courage to reach out and take their hand. Julian kissed his bride as applause erupted around them, and Sophia knew with absolute certainty that she had found her home. Not in a place, but in a person. In the man who loved her intelligence as much as her beauty, who challenged her to be her best self, who stood beside her as an equal partner in all things. Their love story had started with smudged lipstick and jealousy, but it had grown into something beautiful and lasting, something worth fighting for, something that proved that when 2 people are brave enough to be honest about what they feel, when they're willing to face the complications and challenges together, love can truly conquer all.